All right, everybody. So we already know a lot of the basics of Chapter 8. I tested you on that in the Kahoot at the beginning of class. But just so that we have it in our notes, right, we know that the unemployment rate is equal to all of the unemployed people. And here's the thing, and we'll talk about this in a second here. The way you define unemployed, I mean, we've already talked about it a bit, how it has to be you're actively looking for a job within the last 4 weeks. But it's important as we're learning about unemployment to remember and understand that I believe there are 8 different ways that they calculate the unemployment rate. And we're going to go through at the end of the class, and we'll pull up the Bureau of Labor Statistics and we'll take a look at the 8 different ones. But there's 8 different ways that we can kind of slice this, right? So the main one is kind of what we'll be referring to, but I just want you all to know that this is very subjective. This is very subjective. So it's the unemployed people divided by the total labor force, where the labor force is defined by all of the employed people plus those unemployed and looking for a job. And then, of course, because it's a rate, we're going to multiply it by 100. Now, let's talk about why is it that there are so many different types of unemployment rates, right? Well, because we have something called hidden employment. What is hidden employment? Let's talk about that real quick. So hidden employment, these are going to be all the people that are mislabeled in the categorization of either employed, unemployed, or in the labor force. So this is going to be, part-time and temporary workers who are looking for full-time or permanent work. So we've got a couple of terms in this section here. We have underemployed. You might have heard this used. I've also been seeing overemployed used for people that have, 1.5 jobs or 2 full-time jobs or whatever the case may be, right? But for right now, let's just stick to underemployed. These are individuals who are employed in a job that is below their skills. So we often talk about underemployment, especially in the context of the Great Recession, the Great Financial Collapse that happened in 2008 and the slow recovery, right? You had a lot of people that had college degrees that were not getting jobs in the industry that they graduated with, right? And so they were underemployed. So maybe they graduated with a degree in, communications or something like that, but then they ended up, being a manager somewhere, right? Or they, ended up, graduating with a law degree, and then they ended up going and, working, as middle management somewhere, right? So it's employed in a job that's below your current skill level. Another definition in our hidden employment category is when we talk about what are called discouraged workers. So discouraged workers often mess with our unemployment numbers because in a way they should be counted as unemployed, but these are people who have stopped looking for employment. Why? Because they're discouraged, right? Due to lack of suitable options available to them and their particular skill sets, right? So again, like I said, we will talk about the different types of unemployment when we use the BLS data in a bit here. The book does a nice job of kind of breaking down unemployment in a bunch of different graphs. So please, if you haven't, go ahead and take a look at them. It talks about how, it changes compared to sex. It talks about how it changes compared to your age group, right? How unemployments are highest for the very young and they fall. It talks about unemployment by different races and ethnicities. One of the interesting things is how do we compare unemployment internationally? So, when we look at from an international perspective, the US unemployment rate typically has looked a little better than average. So why is this? Well, because partly it's apples to oranges. So we have to exercise caution when comparing cross-country unemployment rates due to there's different definitions of employment and unemployment in these different countries. There's no international standard, unfortunately. There's different survey tools used for measuring unemployment. So what do we mean by this? Well, poorer countries lack both the resources and the technical capabilities in their statistical agencies. So they're going to be less rigorous, less accurate. And then lastly, the third reason is because really we just have different labor markets. So what do we mean by this? Well, in a lot of low-income countries, they don't have a similar situation like we have where labor, workers are involved with an employer who pays them regularly. In low-income countries, there's a lot of short-term work, subsistence activities, barter, and really, all of this stuff is kind of under the umbrella, but let's just put it here, the informal economy. So the informal economy is any kind of economic activity where any type of economic activity that is not reported to the government. All right, questions on just the kind of basics of the labor markets and some of the nuances of it and why it's difficult to compare internationally. All right, cool.